Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, December 11th. Call to order at 6:02 p.m. I move we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and contract negotiations with non-union personnel regarding town administrator, and immediately following go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares, which I do. ASME 1725, wastewater and water unit. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Brian, will you call the roll?
Selectman Loy,
Aye.
Chairman Smith,
Aye.
Selectman Bassresh,
Aye.
Thank you all. We will return on or before 6:45 for continued business.
Amend-
Welcome back. We'll resume the select board meeting at 6:51 PM. Move into the Community Development Block Grant Public Hearing, discussion regarding the status of the FY21 CDBG Housing Rehabilitation Program. Welcome, Brian.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian McCann, Director of Community Development at Franklin County Housing Redevelopment Authority. Thanks for having me tonight. As Jake said, this is just to give you a status report of the FY21 Community Development Block Grant that was awarded to the town from FY21 money. We are sort of at the tail end of this right now. We're required to have two public hearings, one before the grant application and one when the grant is open, which it is right now. So I just wanted to give you an update on this. The housing rehab program is designed to bring houses up to code, to correct health and safety violations at income eligible households. Income eligible is 80% of the area median income. It's about $56,000 for one person, goes up about $8,000 per person in a household to about, a family of four would qualify if there were about $79,700 or something like that. So it benefits low, moderate income folks in three communities. Erving was the lead community, and Northfield and Warwick were also participants in this program. The original unit goal was 17 units of rehab. Right now we have, overall, we have 20 units in process. 11 units have been completed, 5 are in the construction phase, one's in application, one's in scoping, basically, like we call it. No, one in scoping, one in application. You will see that originally we were, in Erving, we had 15 people on a wait list when we put in the application. We did send out applications to 15, all 15 of those households. Only 6 people got them back. One was over income, the other 5 were approved, and they've been completed to date right now. There was, Northfield's had more activity in town. For whatever reason, it varies. We had, when we set out, we had 8 unit goal in Erving and 5 and 3. If that adds up, I can't remember. But anyway, and you just don't know once a program goes, who's going to come in. And also what happens is that the towns get program income, it's called, which is paybacks from previous loans that are out there. So Erving's been a participant in this program for many, many years. We get paybacks. When the application was put in, we had about $44,000 in the fund that we hold for you, for our revolving loan fund. But we've taken back $117,000 because we had a few payoffs come in. So we have to put that into the grant, and the state requires us to spend that money first. So it's a way of them recovering that money and getting, and if there's money left over in the grant, then it goes back to the state. But we always try to identify other projects, which we have. We're at 20 right now, so we can serve more people by using that program income. The program income can only be used in the town that it originated in, so we can't use the money you got in another town. So we spend down your money first. Originally, we can go over the numbers here if you want to. There's, the original budget was $680,000 for housing rehab, and we've taken in it's about 170 something thousand in the 3 towns, with Erving being $119,000 coming back, Northfield, $55,000, in Warwick, only $1,700 coming back on Warwick. So that means that we're able to loan out $856,750 amongst the towns. There is a grant administration fee. It's 27% of the grant application. I know that always seems high, but the state just raised it to 30% now, just because there's just a lot of administration that goes into these things, a lot of reporting, a lot of, for lack of a better term, hand-holding and projects. They get complicated. Individual housing rehab projects sometimes can be as complicated as us doing a sidewalk somewhere, and that's a $500,000 sidewalk. Anyway, out of this, well, we have data on 16 units that have been committed so far. At the bottom of this, you'll see that 16 units. There was 7 of them they were female head of households. There were 7 that had accessibility upgrades and barrier removals. We've put a lift in at someone's house. 15 there was 15 elderly folks. That is in 15 units of elderly. There's 15 out of the units we did. 15 people were elderly. 10 of the units had Energy Star upgrades. So if we're putting in new appliances, heating systems, hot water heaters, they have to be Energy Star rated. We also have to follow the energy code. So sometimes we'll hit that mark by doing some upgrades on the insulation and such. There was, out of the units that were served, there was 5 children between 6 and 18, 1 child under 6, 7 were tested for lead paint, 6 units received lead abatement. Any houses built before 1978, we have to get tested for lead, whether there's children living there or not. We have to do some level of lead remediation, whether it's full abatement or it's just stabilizing paint, bringing it under interim control, they call it. There were 3 people had disabilities in the 16 units we served, and out of those we would do some upgrades, whether it was accessible bathrooms or tubs and showers. And again, there was one that had a lift on it, just a two-step lift, but the person was in a chair and they couldn't, they needed that. So put a ramp and then an interior lift. But anyway, so it's been been a very successful program. We have about $130,000 left in the program. We do have some applicants that are from Northfield. We did out of the Erving. This is a public hearing for the 3 towns, of course. So I wanted to put that out there. In Erving, of those people who had applied originally, and we did another mailing of people who we call inquiries over time. So we keep a log, whether you have a grant going or not. Someone calls into us from your town, for any town. We have a log and a list of people, and then sometimes it's just an inquiry. Someone calls, they heard about our program. Sometimes they get more live, and then we send them a wait list application, and they return it. But we went back on all the inquiries over the last 6 or 7 years, sent out letters to those folks too, to see if we can get anything back. We didn't. We did it again, and we got 1 back in Erving. But we do, we're making an effort to reach out. But right now we have 3 applicants in Northfield. It just so happens that may use up the rest of that money that's in the grant application. And that's that's it in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions for me.
I think the information provided is very detailed and was able to track, so thank you for,
Okay,
for
welcome.
that.
I appreciate it.
And thanks for your support on this. And if there are any
Absolutely.
questions, we can close the hearing, then we can get to the next item that I want to have that separately from what this.
Of course.
From the hearing.
We don't see any questions, so at 6:59, we'll close the public hearing on the discussion regarding the status of the FY21 CDBG Housing Rehab Program. And then we're going to move into discussion regarding status, we're going to move into review and approval of the FY21 Community Development Block Grant Program Revision, CDBG. And so it looks like you're looking to extend it through June 30 to complete out the
Yeah.
active projects that are hopefully kicking off here.
That's just extended. This, we have a few out to bid, or 1 out to bid right now, and the other ones we're out, we're processing those applications. And then there's been like a few projects that shut down because there's outside work to do and we have to wait. So we can go, usually these are 3-month extensions, but we're just going for 6 because we know that we're going to get to the end of March and we're not going to get to those ones that need outside work done. So we'd like to extend it to June 30th.
Any concerns?
I don't have any
None
concerns
here.
with that.
Would one of you like to make a motion?
Sure. Make a motion that we extend the, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but the CDBG grant program number 00923 through June 30th, 2024. And I'll authorize the chair to make any, sign any documents needed.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, all right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You going to sign
Thank
that
you.
now, Jake? Great,
I
okay.
am, yes. I'll get it to you.
Great. Thanks a lot.
There you
Good
are.
seeing you all.
You too, thank you. And with that, it is 7:01, so I will call the joint meeting with the Board of Assessors to order for the 2024 tax classification hearing. Come on up and, yeah, probably best sit
got
sit
mics.
over there. We got room and
There's mics over there.
they're mic'd up. They're good. Yep, we're good to go over there, so. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
So here we are, as every year, talk about the shifts, to talk about exemptions, et cetera, and where we are for FY24 taxes. I will give you the floor.
The Board of Assessors met and we voted to recommend, it's your decision, we recommend that we continue as we have done in the past with the 65% shift, which if we had a single tax rate, would be $14.19. And with the shifted rate, the residential tax rate would be $9.22, and the commercial, industrial, personal property would be $15.34. That's part of the equation. The other part, we also voted to recommend and suggest and recommend and support this small commercial exemption for small business. It would affect 8 businesses, and it would relieve them of about $1,727.86 total. It's not much, but it's all the law allows us to do to support small business. So we recommend that you vote to do that also.
I assume the numbers presented, well, I should ask, are the numbers presented in the tables, the shift, et cetera, inclusive of the exemption happening or not, or do they not really move the number enough to be visible at that level?
The
The 922,
1,727.86.
yeah, is that including?
It's negligible.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, in that last sentence, the impact didn't change.
Oh, it didn't shift the
percentage.
rate. Okay, yeah, I missed
Yeah,
that.
it was too small.
Yep, I got to minimal and must not have continued. Thank you. Questions? So we want to start, or I will if you want. It's up to you guys.
Go for it. I'll follow up if I have others.
Okay, I think probably the first question on all our minds is just the tax rate this year is significantly more than last year. And more than 2.5%, obviously, and so knowing the override didn't go through and things like that, I'm sure everyone has questions about why such a drastic change.
Okay, I'll explain it the best I can.
Simpler is better.
Yeah, well, I'm simple, so that works good for me. We have professional appraisers. We'll start off by saying we have ongoing court cases, so I'm reluctant to just spread out more information than is necessary, so we don't affect those. but we hire professional appraisers to appraise the biggest commercial property we have. We pay them roughly $35,000 a year to do that. And whatever their appraisal comes back at, we split with Northfield. We get most of the value for Erving and some for Northfield. And it's because of changes in that appraised value has affected this tax rate. I don't know how to be brief, but just so for anybody's listening who don't deal with these things all the time, homeowners are appraised based on market value of homes. And the assessors are given information about every sale in town, and we only consider sales they call arm's length sales, not my mother sold it to me for $1 or something, my cousin or my friend. This is just a willing buyer and a willing seller. Here's what things sell for. And the way the law requires the assessors to do, let's just say we have every property in home is assessed at $200,000, they're all selling for $250,000. If they're selling for more than what we have them appraised at across the board, the ones that sell, we have to look at every value and raise them up a little bit so that they're somewhere near equal. It's not an exact science. We try to get as equal as we can. The reason we do that, years ago, it wasn't like that. There were 6 houses that were identical. I bought my house for $10,000 years ago, and somebody now sells their house for $100,000. I'm paying tax on $10,000. They're paying tax on $100,000. It's an identical house. The state said, that's probably because people complained, so that's not fair, because the guy plows the street or the school, I get the same services, but they're paying $50 and I'm paying $500, whatever it is. So they require the assessors to try to even it out based on sales, what a property really selling for, as close as we can. It's not like that for commercial properties. Commercial properties, there are a number of ways of doing it, but as I understand it, the way the Appellate Tax Board likes to have it done, and it's fine with us, is the income approach. And when interest rates are low, 2-3% interest rates, and a big business, they work on borrowed money, lots more money than I deal with, then their business expenses are less. So they make more profit. When the interest rate goes up 7, 8, 9%, or whatever they pay, they have a huge amount of more expense on millions and millions of dollars they deal with, so their profit goes down. So they're based on what is their anticipated income. And again, it's not an exact science. None of the assessors here can go up and look at Northfield Mountain, for example, and say, what's that giant generator worth? We have no idea. That's why we hire professionals to do it. And the result of the professional appraisals changes the value of that facility and other commercial facilities based on interest rates and other things that I'm not a professional appraiser. So that is not simple. It's as simple as I can put it. Homeowners are assessed one way, businesses are assessed a different way, and because of the appraisals and the way they come in, this affects our tax rate. There's very little to do with, did we buy a backhoe or something like that.
I guess my initial follow-up question was just, so the income approach is used on all commercial property? It's not specific to just
I don't know if it's used on every property. Jackie
Okay.
might know.
Please. Thank you, Jackie.
So you usually use an income approach on properties that produce income that are not owner occupied. That's the key. So we have very few properties in Erving that are not owner occupied. So in particular, we really only use the income approach on the Northfield Mountain project, and it's also a hydroelectric facility, which is a specialty property. The other commercial properties in town are used a different way because they're all owner occupied. We don't have any just standalones. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I think they'd answer my question. I was kind of the twofold, which was the hydroelectric being unique. Is that income approach only for
Um,
that, or it's not, but in this case, for
No.
Erving, it generally is the only one
So
that's used that way.
the appraisal, when we go out to have it appraised, we request they look at all approaches. We ask them to look at a sales approach. It doesn't, it's always, when it is sold, and it is sold actually quite often, it's always a bundled sale, which means there's lots of assets together, and you can allocate what that value would be based on the percentage of the megawatts the facility produces, but it's not a true sales approach because it's bundled. It would not be an arm's length sale. We ask them to do a cost approach only for the allocation value, how much of it is in Erving and how much of it is in Northfield. Now, a cost approach, that you would use sometimes for a shopping mall. In its cost approach, new, less depreciation. Replacement costs new, less depreciation. And then you can derive at a value for that one. Then the other one is the income approach, which is the one that we use, and there are two methods of the income approach. There is the discounted cash flow, and there's the direct capitalization. So what we do, because the ATB prefers it, is the direct cap. However, our appraiser and our appraisal has all the values in there, and it's in one report. So it's looked at, and then what you want to do when you're done with your report is you look at the groupings of how all the values came in. I'll use a hypothetical. One of them came in at $1 million, one came in at 950,000, the other one came in at 925. Okay, so that's a grouping, and it's a way to proof that you're looking at the right numbers and you're picking the right support material when you're doing the income approach. That's how it works. It's pretty complicated, and that's why we hire the specialists. On top of that, not only is it an income approach fairly complicated, and then you use a cap rate, a capitalization rate, or a discounted cash flow, but then it's a hydroelectric facility, which is another layer entirely on the realm of really up there. So I hope that explained it a little bit.
Definitely, probably enough for me to not want to know more about the calculations specifically, but
Yep.
thank you. No, but it answered my question for sure. Thank you.
Just to note, we have been valuing the hydrosensitivity regulation, so that occurred in 1999. So over the years, the value has ebbed and flowed, depending, some of it is dependent on the tax rate. We know more, the interest rate, we more now as we do more and more of it. It's just a bigger drop because the value was so high prior. So it did drop 147 million from the previous value. Of that, 115 million is Erving's allocated drop in value. So Northfield also took a brunt, and then we did.
So for those that don't know, that 115 million drop then it doesn't go away. It just means the value of tax burden that created has to get shifted to the other portions of the town.
Yes, so you have 100%, right?
Yeah.
You want to raise your tax rates 100% of the valuation times what you need to raise and appropriate equals your value, equals your tax rate. So in previous years, for the most part, we've been at a 77, 80, 82, 85% allocation for mostly the hydroelectric facility, although our other commercial and industrial properties and utilities, they do take a big chunk of it, but the biggest taxpayer is the Mountain Project. And then that meant the residential and open space carried 10 or 12 or 15% of the burden. So now what we've done is we've shifted it a little bit more, and from the chart in front of you, you can see that at a 65% MRF, the CIP would pay 87.79%. That's in that column, it says 65%. And RO, which would be residential and open space, would pay the 12.21% of the tax burden. Little numbers. If we were at 100%, CIP would still pay 81.21% of the tax burden, and residential and open space would pay 18.79%. It's just because we have such a large commercial base and a very little residential base. So, but when there's a big drop like that, there is a shift.
I want to give credit where it's due. Jackie put these numbers together in these spreadsheets, and appreciate that she's very good at doing that. And we have different ways of expressing things, and it's two ways to try to express something in an understandable form that's quite complex and difficult to understand. She does it one way, I do another way, and that's okay.
We said the same thing, Dan.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
It didn't sound, it was different, but it didn't sound different.
I do have one other question. And Dan, you had mentioned we have ongoing ATV cases right now. And the question I have is, and I know you can't dive into particulars because it's an ongoing case and we're waiting for the results of those hearings, but has the MRF shift been part of the claim from the person filing the claim? Is that part of the basis for the claim, or is it just the valuation process and dollar amount?
It's just the valuation. The minimum residential factor shift is law.
Yeah.
And other larger communities do it all the time. We're just a small community that does it, which is a bit unusual. But no, that's not, what we're doing as far as the MRF is concerned, the shift in the tax burden is perfectly, no.
I just want to make sure they weren't trying to.
There is no way that that would even come to consideration. The argument that the taxpayer had at our recent ATV cases is they feel they're being overvalued.
Okay,
They feel the value is just too high.
okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Could I say, once you do set the tax rate, according to Jackie, again, she just needs to get it approved, the assessors get it approved by the state, and then you got a couple weeks, so tax bills will not come out as a Christmas present, but not too long after, which is sad, but here we are. Nobody likes to pay.
Right.
We'll bring in the new year.
So I just did want to mention on the sheet, I wanted to let you know that the average value of a single-family home for fiscal year '23, so it's still a little behind, increased about $14,000 for the average value over fiscal year '22. And what that will mean based off the average from fiscal year '23 is this increase, should you go with a 65% MRF, would be an additional $290 for the average single-family home. Yep, that's what it amounts to now. And also wanted to let you know that the values did go up, an average of 5.5%. The lowest was 0, the highest was 9%. We used the sales from January 1st of '22 to December 31st of '22. I expect a similar increase in fiscal year '25 values. Our houses are still going above what I currently have them adjusted to, which means unless there's a real drop in the market, we'll be having increases again in valuation.
I know it's speculative, but I assume something similar probably. I mean, the market's been pretty consistently high, or is it like,
I'm
hard to say?
hoping that it's only around 5%, but it's hard to tell. Statistically, they tell you that the market's going to go down, but locally in the Pioneer Valley, we haven't really seen that. Even in other communities. And Erving does still have a fairly low tax rate, with a very limited housing stock, and we have a lot of amenities. So when you add all those things up, people are willing to pay what the seller is asking. And they're going still very quickly. We had 3 on the market less than 3 weeks ago. They're all under contingency, so they are off the market. They've been sold.
okay, thank you. Other questions, comments?
No, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the increase. It's a big increase,
It is.
a little over 15%. And you said about 5% of that, 5.5, is based on valuation.
Yes,
And
for
then
the,
the rest
yes.
would be the shift based on mountain project. I mean, there's nuance in there.
There's a lot of nuance because if you were just gonna do a single tax rate, I could say, yes, that's about 5%, 5.5% more than the
Yeah.
value, but we're shifting the burden on commercial, industrial, personal property. That skews all the numbers, and it's not an easy question to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
I think it's more like because of the shift, it's probably 1%
right.
change in residential value and the impact in the overall tax rate
Right.
for residential.
Yes, because you are
Because
shifting quite a bit.
you're
of the
shifting a
burden.
third of that 5% change, 2/3,
Yeah.
third, 2/3, one way or the other. I can't remember which is half is which, you probably know.
Yeah, no, you're right. We are shifting more burden to the commercial, industrial, and personal property when you do an MRF. So therefore, it's less of an impact on the residential and open space. I will tell you that CIP values did not change, or we didn't adjust the commercial and industrial values. That's something you really only do when you do a full revaluation, which ours is coming up pretty soon, 27, I think.
Except for the hydro.
Except for the hydro.
Okay,
Um,
got it.
So the only place to shift that burden is onto residential and open. The shortfall of the 100 and,
Well, no, it
15
gets spread
million.
out, it gets spread out among all the,
Okay.
all the
All right.
parcels, all of them. We basically dropped, we talk about equalized value all the time in the valuation, so we basically dropped the value. There were some increases in the residential valuation. We had a couple of houses that were completed. I had some increases in the personal property individual accounts, so it wasn't as bad as it looks. There was some growth, not a whole heck of a lot, but some. And it just, because it's the largest taxpayer and it was such a big amount, it just brings everything, well, down and up. It brings the valuation down and the burden up for everyone else.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my short version thought of that formula was the denominator went down because now the overall value of everything went down. When that
Yes.
happens, everybody gets more
They do.
burden because it's spread out over less. And then we shift, so when the biggest taxpayer of the shift goes down significantly, pretty much, I mean, I didn't do the exact math, but pretty much percent for percent, we took on that burden. So,
Right.
I mean, it's nearly 15%. I just rounded, I didn't do numbers, and, but roughly 15% reduction in value and about a 15% increase on our residential rate, with the shift included. So. And their portion of the pie went down and the whole pie got smaller. So both is bad for us and then for us residential taxpayers. And then in terms of residential value went up too. So all of those things are causing that residential rate to be higher.
They all mix together, and it's very difficult to take something that is inherently not good, paying more money for homeowners, they don't like it, it's not good. The best blush I can put on it, I think, from my point of view, is most towns around will be envious. We've got somebody that looks out, they're paying almost 77-78% of every dollar we spend. And most towns don't have that at all. They don't have much of a commercial base. And years ago, they did attempt to make a case when I was there of, I think they call it disproportionate taxation. And they were, we've won that. It's, no, it's not. It's just tax what your value is, same as everybody else. I mean, you can't walk in and say to the assessors, my house worth $300,000, only tax me on 2. You can't. And so everybody's taxed to the best of our ability, fair and equal, according to the law.
I got nothing else.
So we need to make a decision motion on the shift and then consider the small commercial exemption.
So I'll make a motion to shift the minimum residential factor known as the MRF to 65% per recommendation of the assessors. This will result in a tentative tax rate of $9.22 for residential and open space and $15.34 for commercial, industrial, and personal property.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And then Dan summed it up well on the exemption impact and, benefit cost of that shift. Questions on that specifically? I think we've adopted it for a handful of years now, historically.
Yep.
No questions?
I have no-
Motion?
Motion to authorize the small commercial exemption statute for fiscal year 2024, and this will shift the tax burden of $112,638 to the remaining commercial, industrial, and personal property classes.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, with that, the tax classification hearing is closed for tonight. And I'll move that we adjourn the joint meeting, continue the select board meeting at 7:26 PM.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right, before we jump into the Bridge Street, let's do a review of the police department policy 4.28, police vehicle second read. Is there any questions or concerns on that?
No questions here.
No, I see the changes that we had discussed were all made,
Yep,
and they were minimal.
agreed. So we will carry that for a third read next meeting?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, review of the Bridge Street reconstruction and Maple Avenue paving project bid documents. Glenn, Bill, you joining us? Or both, either, both? We can pull up another chair. Please come up and walk us through.
Maybe you were gonna have the PDF up?
That would probably be very handy. Would you like me to do that?
Well, it might be helpful if somebody has questions. It might be easier to talk off of that. Is that okay?
While you guys start introducing?
If you have the capability of doing it.
If you,
Yeah. Sorry.
no, you're
okay.
fine.
They're gonna
We just talked about it
bustle
the other
around and get
day.
it done while we chat.
For
Okay.
budget, but we haven't talked about it doing it yet, so we'll do it on the fly tonight, see how it goes. That's, oh, good, it's not, it doesn't go any further, all right. Give it a second.
Excuse me.
Maybe just to open it up before we get started, and we'll let them get that up before we get into the details, but, so this is the Bridge Street wall replacement and the Maple Ave roadway project.
Yep.
This is that retaining wall repair and then repaving while we're there and
Yep.
mobilized in the area. There's been a lot of work to get to here, and so this is bid documents, pretty much.
Yes.
We-
Yeah,
we hope
I would say
anything else.
95%. I'm still trying to work out a couple of things with geotechnical folks,
Okay,
because the wall is, by the way, I'm Bill Story from Weston and Sampson Engineers. I should say that. The wall replacement is complicated by the fact that it's it's up against Route 2, and there's only one way in for the contractor. You can't, no supplies, no materials can come the other way. We extend, I'll show it to you on the plan. We did extend, we've determined that it's shown on the set I sent you, but we extended like another 20 feet. Kind of a temporary, as they excavate, normally you would, if we're showing a 10-foot geotextile fabric with the wall, 10 feet back, you know, on various layers. I don't think that, you know, if the contractor uses Ready Rock, which is pretty standard, they don't typically, at a wall this height, they don't really need it. But typically, you'd go back that 10 feet, and then it's a 1.5 to 1 slope. If we did that, it's way too close to Route 2, and also would neck down the ability for a contractor to get anything into the site. It's already gonna be complicated enough, you know, when they got a flatbed full of blocks. Like, where are they going? You know, it's gonna be a trick.
I'll just have you pause there, because I'm listening to it going, we'll follow better if we put it up on screen.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's almost there, so
Yeah.
we'll
So
just
it's
wait
a
moment.
there's three, we're bidding this as like a 3 schedule project. So you'll have Bridge Street on the wall, you'll have the milling and overlay of the treatment plant, you know, the septic field driveway, and then the milling and overlay of Maple Ave.
As like alt 1, alt 2?
No,
Basically,
well,
or-
no,
or
it's all gonna be
phases?
one
Okay.
bid, but like schedule, it's just because I believe you have 3 different, well, you've allocated different funds. I don't know if it matters which pot of money it's coming from, but it's easier to keep track instead of just having, you know, one large project.
Okay,
Oh, look at that, he's getting there.
he's almost there.
Yeah, I apologize for not getting Brian those documents. We had discussed that and, you know, Sunday morning. Here we go.
I assume probably the first couple will be illustrative of what we're talking about.
The first couple,
Slides with the prints. Brian, I think if you go down a page or two.
yeah, there's only two slides that have any value to what you're probably concerned with here.
Okay,
You go to the 3rd page.
I think this is like the next biggest project since a bridge, and the aesthetics of this is a little different than that, so,
Yeah.
visually. Is that
This is
the
it.
one to refer to? Okay.
Yeah,
'Cause
so.
we have it too, so.
So the intent of this project, you know, was to, you know, replace the wall, but as part of that, we added drainage. We're gonna add a couple of structures, catch basins just before the driveway end, which required us to submit an NOI because we created a new outfall. Fortunately, it doesn't see a lot of flow, because if you create a new outfall, you have to include stormwater treatment to that. So that, we're able to, it's basically just another manhole that has apparatus inside there that, you know, town's gonna have to maintain, but that will collect, you know, sediment and oils and whatnot, which should also be collected in the catch basins. I think you guys have a pretty standard program for cleaning structures, so. So we're replacing the wall basically right where it's at, with what would be a large block precast concrete wall. So they're going to be blocks that are about 4 feet long, 1.5 feet high. The bottom blocks are probably going to be 6 feet deep, but then you know 6 feet in width, I should say. And you know, as you'll probably get up to just the normal like 36-inch block as they climb. It's barely visible on this, but we were showing here, this was just a placeholder, you can't really see it, is the, we were calling it, I don't want to use the tip here, we were calling it limits of sheet piling, but we're just gonna call it, temporary excavation support, so we're not telling the contractor, it's in the spec book, section 2252. They have to provide a, engineered plan on how they're gonna, how they're going to, support their excavation. Because if we don't have that, the excavation for this wall, where of course it's at its highest, would probably end right here. That's just too close to the road, it would not work. So right now, we're shown to here, we're bringing it back to where the wall steps down. But with their wall manufacturer, they're gonna be required to submit design plans from their their block manufacturer, because we can't tell them to use Ready Rock, they can use any other suitable or similar product. They'll provide a design. I've done this before. We did a decent sized wall in Russell that was maxed out at about the same height. For them, it only needed a 6-inch embedment. So we're showing right now 4 foot. I don't think it's gonna need that because, we're, the geotechnical engineers have, multiple factors of safety, but they have their own system, and these companies do the walls on their own all the time. Yeah, so that's that. One of the other things that had come up, now we were gonna try to work with the design of Route 2. That's so far down the road that, and we are so far off the road that I think you can pretty much do anything you want on Route 2. I should have brought the profile. But what I have done, you know how steep it is at the entrance? I believe DOT's standard is like 2% for like 60 feet or something. That's just improbable here because we have to meet grade back down here, worst case. So what I was able to do was I now have like a 30-foot run, with some regrading at 5%. So it will significantly, because so this contour right here is the 424. This is where here's the 424. It's going back about 10, 15 feet. The same with the 422. So that's going to flatten out the landing a little bit at least, so that you're not, on like a 30-degree angle trying to figure out whether you can see or not. So the shaded area would be the limits of reconstruction that are going to be required essentially just for the work that's going to get done there, and then this hatched area is just a milling and overlay. We're going to create a reconstructed area here just to get the structures out of the manholes for the septic tanks out of the grassed area, just so they're more easily accessible. Now, that's not a big deal. The blue shaded line is the wetland setbacks. The green is where that culvert, the 24-inch culvert that crosses Bridge Street is now. We put our outfall, we could have, ideally we would have just put our new outfall here, but there's an anticipation that this pipe is going to get replaced in the future because it's failing and it doesn't meet, it's perched, it's pretty bad. So we got it down far enough that any future work, there'll be no impact to this work. You don't have to redo anything. So that's about it on this slide. If you want to slide to the next one. This one, nothing really to talk about here. So we're using, the same concept here, there's that fire pond with the pipe there. So our work is going to start, because that pipe is probably, the fire pond and the pipe are probably going to get worked on in the future. So we pulled back where we would be clear of any future work there, milling and overlaying all the way down to basically where the right-of-way next to those like 10 or 15 foot accesses to the salt shed area and then the private property. We are replacing the one dry well just to get it off into the layout. It's a little bit off the layout now, so it's just one dry well. It wasn't part of the original concept, but it's small money relative to the scope of the project. So that's about it for the project.
Question. I'll start.
Yep.
Is that the only stormwater management on Maple? That dry well?
There's other dry wells, but they're They're good condition. This one's only getting moved just to get it, you know,
Yeah, this one is still in good condition, it's just not all in the layout.
yeah. And they're just dry wells, there's no piping involved, because there is no way to get the drainage out.
Is it just me or is that print different than the one in our packet?
So,
I don't think so. What do you see that's different?
So, oh, no, I know what it is, I think. Like in front of the red car, to the right of the red car, at the 8 mark, there's a black line there, a dark line on the presentation up there, and on ours, it's like barely the faintest dashed line I can barely see. Or is
This
that just
line?
mine?
The sewer line?
No, the one that,
Or the contour, maybe.
the contour.
It's the
Okay.
contour,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
I can barely see that here. Up there, it looks very bold.
Yeah.
So it's throwing me. Probably because most of those, there's other squares along the way that I assume are the dry wells or something, and I can't.
Yeah,
I'm not picking those up on the one I'm looking at here at all. I don't see those at all.
okay.
Do you
There's
see those?
There's a handful of them, I think there's 4 total catch basins, no, 5.
Do you see those catch basins at all on this one? It may be just layers or something in Adobe's different than
Okay.
in the browser up there. It's just throwing me because I don't see those at all on
Oh,
here. The dry wells. It's not you. It's just a layer
Yeah,
issue
yeah.
probably
Yeah.
from CAD.
Yeah, yeah.
It's generally the same. It just didn't have the
Yeah.
same overlays
Yeah.
or clarity. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done making things complicated. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So, just going back to the previous slide, something that you touched on, and I'm sure there's a good answer for this.
Yep.
But I just want to hear it. On that green line that you said is the 24-inch drainage,
Yeah.
and you talked about moving that piece but couldn't because of the drainage?
No.
Or we didn't want to interrupt that or interfere with potential future work?
Right, it's just to steer clear of future work, so you don't have to redo anything you're doing now.
Would it make sense, not that we want to take on more, but would it make sense to incorporate that where it's sort of in the zone now?
Yes, but
Were you talking replace the pipe?
Right.
Well, as we know from our recent work on Wheelock, like, it's a serious process, because you have to meet the stream standards, we'll have to go to Army Corps, and it will be like, I mean, if I was gonna ballpark that one, it's probably $400,000 or $500,000.
It took us almost,
because of the fire pond.
it took us almost 2.5 years just to get the Army Corps of Engineers permit on Wheelock Street.
And for people who might be listening and wondering why,
Yes.
that's the answer
the
that I,
It still needs to be done, but we'd like to get the structural concerns addressed,
no,
and that should buy us time to deal with the wetlands permitting that we have to do these other 2 projects.
I told Mariah that that culvert is perfect for some of these grants,
Yeah.
because it has all the flaws, you know, it's failing and it's perched, you know, so they, you know, the whole thing is to allow for, you know, to improve things so that wildlife can pass through these unobstructed, like we did on
Yep.
Wheelock.
so by waiting, hopefully we can get somebody else to pay for it.
Right.
And we've had
That's a great answer.
we had a positive experience with the Wheelock project, so that's
Yep.
that's a funding source that should be available to us again. And again, Mariah
Okay.
did a great job. We had a very successful project, so.
What was the funding you used on that?
Was that Complete Streets? No.
No,
that wasn't.
that was rural and small town.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact subsection of it, but rural and small town grants to the state.
Okay,
And that
'cause
was based
there are
off the-
grants specific for culvert replacement like this.
Right.
Yeah, so,
Thank you for indulging me.
no problem.
Plus, we're looking at bridge work there too, so.
Yeah,
Right.
busy little area for,
With no room to do any of it.
right, right.
And I just lost mine. The steel shielding or whatever it's, sheeting or whatever it's called out
Yeah.
there, that's basically something to, because we're gonna have to hold it back without excavating it in full, right? So it's like
Right.
temporarily while they
Right, so
rebuild
they-
it and
so they
then,
can-
yeah, okay.
Do a vertical.
We'll like drive in a,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, it'll be something like soldier pollen lagging or sheeting. Our structure, our geotechnical folks they think the material's too dense for sheeting, but, you know, that's,
Something.
it's not.
That's the contractor's problem?
Yeah, that's right, they'll have to hire someone, you know.
Bill, do you
Now,
want to just-
I mean, generally, there's very little room between where the retaining wall is and the POTW3 fields, et cetera, so most of that work's happening from above?
That's
One of the biggest challenges?
That's part of the challenge, right?
Okay.
You know, yeah. Again, like the wall down here, I think they'll be able to, that excavation shouldn't be too bad, but when we get up here, like we already talked, we need to be able to get trucks in and out of there. You know, because there's no place to stockpile anything really. Would the town be averse to stockpile areas down on Bridge Street to the bridge? Like if they were gonna stockpile,
I
you know?
think if conservation is all right, there's, may have to be silt barriers.
I'm thinking like the wall blocks, because, you know, those are gonna come in, it's like, where are we gonna put them? You know, you got all this great open space.
That's my biggest concern,
Do you feel,
ensuring nothing ends up there.
Yep. Yeah, it's, well, I'm showing construction fence going around the entire perimeter,
Okay, right.
for what good that can do sometimes, but, you know, it's clear, well, it's noted here, I think it's noted on G1 possibly, and I think it's in, if it's not in the specs, I'll make sure it's in the spec section.
I'm assuming, and I didn't see it in there and I might have just missed it, is the anticipation to close the road?
Oh, yes.
For the
Yeah,
entire
the road has
half?
to get closed,
Because
yeah.
there's not enough width to do anything else?
No,
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
They're probably gonna find some more room just for the equipment.
Yeah?
There's not a lot of work
right,
area for what
there
needs to be
isn't,
done.
yeah.
And Wendell's already aware of this possible closure also on this project.
What kind of time period are we anticipating for that? The closure period? Do you have a rough estimate?
I don't know, let me see how much time I gave them for the project. I might have given them, a lot of it is gonna depend on the manufacturer of the blocks.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna bump it up, I say 120 days on here, but I don't, it'll probably be 150 days, I think. But that's for the whole, you know, paving process as well. Once, you know, I don't know if you've, like these walls, and what's nice, actually, can you scroll to, two more pages, I think?
Up or down?
Further into the,
Further into the document, yeah, right.
down.
Yeah, this one right here. So what's nice about this project, this here, is, so this is the profile wall. This is, the actual profile now is a little different because the blocks are a little deeper, but they're all at the same elevation. So the contractor's gonna come in, and once they set those bottom blocks, it's like putting Legos together, because they're, you know, it's got the two, you know,
Yeah.
Pins
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
We'll go up fast.
yeah, so and there's no stepping, and that's usually what, you know, the base is, the base is all at the same level, so it's not like you got some base here and then it goes up a block, because, and then, you know, so that should speed the process up a little bit.
Is the wall itself stepped back, or is it just
No,
that the block size
it's a
narrows?
It'll be a little bit of a batter, but, you know.
And the block size, did you say that the depth will decrease as
Well,
it goes up?
they'll have like probably 3 size blocks. There'll be like the bottom blocks, which are like 5 or 6 feet, and then they'll probably go to 3 foot. And the top blocks, I think, are 24 inch,
Okay.
you know,
But you're talking width, not depth.
depth.
No, he's talking depth.
Yeah, the width, they'll all be the same. They'll all be like
They're all the
48 by,
They're all the 4 foot? Okay.
yeah, 4 by 2.
I just worked on a project similar to this in my day job, and it was once they got that first line set,
Yeah.
it was,
It's impressive. I bet.
it was slick.
Which is the other reason I think that Bill's looking for the staging area for the block on Bridge Street, to keep feeding that machine, so that machine's not sitting and not being unloaded off of Route 2, because it's
Right.
probably where they're gonna have to be unloaded,
Right.
is off of Route 2. So, again, I think that's why it's probably a good idea to let them.
It'd be nice to get a
Use
caravan
that.
of these trucks coming in, low, 'cause there's only so many blocks they can carry just the weight limits. It'd be nice to get them all coming, the manufacturer sending, a couple, half dozen trucks loaded with block, get them all unloaded. They're all numbered, and these guys just have, the contractor will just have to find the block number and just, in this case, there's only gonna be like, 4 different numbered blocks, so. And then we're gonna have chain link fence on top because we have to, because it's fall, fall protection. And then the wall is gonna be up and it's gonna be graded above the road now, so, and curved, the road's gonna be curved, so that the water is now not being directed to the wall like it is currently. So it's, the wall will be just slightly above and it's gonna be like a stone, yeah, it's what we did, I think, on River, right?
Well, Millens.
Oh, so we did something like stone or something, so it won't need to be maintained, but it's not pavement, so we don't have to pay the price for impervious area.
And that's gonna be pitched away from the wall then, and then
Yeah,
come
it'll-
down to the new structure, the
Exactly.
structure's okay.
Yep.
No, the fence in addition to a guardrail or in place of?
Both. We're having both.
Okay.
Yeah.
In addition to.
Permanent, both?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Yep.
not
Okay.
Yeah, the
construction.
gonna say
guardrails
that's-
for humans,
That's, I was gonna say, I'm hoping we're not getting rid of the
No.
guardrail, because that's a big drop if a car accidentally.
Yeah,
Yep,
it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
yep.
So the chain link's permanent, not construction only.
And it won't have PVC, right? No PVC.
She's not here tonight.
Oh, okay. Black PVC, so no one will see it. Black PVC is better because you don't see it, but that's up to you. Like, you really kind of disappears.
Oh, you're talking about fencing?
Yeah.
The
The
fencing?
coating on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
When
did
it's-
galvanized on wheel lock,
When you black it out, it's,
Yeah, right,
So
so
it's-
galvanized guardrail. Or behind, I should say. Okay. Can they do any staging up at the salt shed if needed, equipment-wise? I mean, I know blocks, they want them closer, I'm sure, but if they just need to stage different equipment that won't be used every day or on site, I mean, that's an option?
I think it's an option. I think material-wise, it's probably a DEP thing with the landfill, if they're like wanting to stage material there to keep trucks moving. Like if they dump it and clean it up afterwards at the end, like on Wheelock Street. That's something we'll probably have to talk with Conservation or DEP about. Also, if they use it as a material staging area also, along with equipment. Otherwise, they're gonna need places to stage trucks,
Yeah.
to dump also, which may probably be, and this will be,
And if you allow them to use the rest of Bridge Street,
yeah.
they can leave, that would, they might just want to leave their equipment there too. And they're going to
Right,
leave their
if it's closed,
excavators and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
right on the edge of the road where they left them that day,
Sure.
but,
Can you go back up to the
and I've noted that any damage they do to,
first one?
like if they trash the road from, beyond our
Be,
paving limits, they have to fix it.
Yep.
So,
Okay. And we're repaving all of the POTW driveway and path, or just down to,
okay, so Bridge Street, I think the limits of reconstruction are to here.
okay,
And then the POTW is a mill and overlay, the entire thing,
okay,
again, with the additional area of reconstruction, so that this whole thing will be paved and the structures will be readily visible, and
because that's grassy, we're gonna extend
This is- yeah,
the
the grass-
impervious
the grass
out that
line
far?
is-
Okay,
this is the limits of the grass now.
got it.
I'm sorry, this is the limits of the grass, so this area here.
That's
is
new, okay.
Just,
I'd ask for that for
Yeah.
the ease of maintenance.
yeah,
So, because right now, it's just, when it gets covered, it's not cleared off enough. And this way, the grades are still, the coverage will still be lower than the asphalt, but it will be cleared better for maintenance in the winter time if they need to get into it.
is it safe and possible to stage along that where it's going to be milled and overlaid again anyway? Like blocks or anything? Probably not.
No, because they need to get down in there every
Right,
day.
that's,
So treatment plant guys are still gonna need to get down in
Oh,
there.
on a regular, down to those, yeah, okay.
Every
Yeah,
day,
I got you. Yeah, yeah, okay.
their trip is gonna get longer.
They're gonna get some steps in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there can be a lot of parking and walking in there.
Yeah.
I guess my other one is, and you're kind of showing it, I'm assuming where the wall was reconstructed just on the right at the edge of the plan, by DOT during that
That's the
storm.
riprap slope.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
riprap slope.
Yeah.
We're not getting anywhere near that.
No, we're
Any-
staying
any
out of there.
permanent
Yeah, we're
is
staying
someday
completely-
down the road with them.
Yeah. That, I think is gonna, is that?
They're aware of this
They're-
project, and they
Okay.
understand that whatever they're going to do for a reconstruction will have to blend into what the town's doing on our layout, so.
Okay.
Yep.
So where we stopped, we hope they will pick up and continue all the way around at some
Correct.
point.
Yep.
Okay. How much of a changing grade is that apron there, or the approach onto Route 2? So you said it's 424, Route 2 looks like it's 428. You
Yeah,
said
this
it's,
is 424, 426 here.
okay,
You know, right now, there's kind of like the, you know, obviously, you know, there's only so much we can do. You know, but right now, they're like, especially on the, you know, this portion of, you know, it's like a ramp right now, so.
Yeah.
yeah. I guess that's why I was like, how different is it now? It's well below that, I'm assuming?
Yeah,
And it drops off.
Quickly, yeah, yeah, obviously, okay.
yeah, so,
You also have this, it's hard to see, but there's the little corner of the home that's right along Route 2, and there's a utility pole that sits right at that corner. So when people are trying to come up Bridge Street, not only are they dealing with that incline and trying to like.
Oh, on the left
traffic
side,
both ways,
on the west
Oh,
side.
right at the NG
they're trying to see
050
around the
mark
utility
there,
pole.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So by flattening out that space, not only do you give them a better vantage point, but hopefully you can safely navigate around that utility pole and get a better clear sight as they're trying to navigate into traffic. We're hoping that maybe that pole will be relocated in the second project that MassDOT does, but in the meantime, that's not part of this project.
we are relocating the pole that provides the utility to the valve building, just because it's in the way. You know, we're not gonna be able to install the wall with it, the pole, because right now the pole is like literally right in front of the wall, right?
Right in front of the handle.
So we're just gonna end up putting it behind the installed wall.
Yep.
That'll get done first. And that'll be, you know, it's an allowance, and it's up to, you know, the contractor to coordinate it all. But it's not that complicated, because I think it's just power, right? There's no, you know, SCADA or telephone into there, so.
Other questions? Concerns?
We're putting a drain in the back too, which is, you know, back of the wall, which is common practice now, which I'm sure is not there now.
No.
So that any.
There is, it's this gap between.
Right, yeah.
The gaps that keep getting bigger.
It's the natural drain, yeah.
So we'll tie that drain into that drainage, that'll just run back here, so it's been figured out that we can get it to grade there.
Tie in, okay.
Brian, part of the Route 2 discussion
Yes.
was to change the elevation. There's that hump coming in at that intersection.
Right.
Part of that was potentially lowering Route 2 and
Right.
evening out that hump there.
Correct.
This will, it looks like it should alleviate some of that drop that they had to do, because we're going to be increasing the height of that intersection on our end, on Bridge
Yeah.
Street.
And if they
And
lower it a
tapering
little
it.
bit, then.
So
you're
we
gonna
take
get
up a
what-
few feet, they
Yeah.
they don't have to drop 6 feet, they might only have to drop 2 to
Right.
get that to a grade that makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, they have more.
Or
to-
if they
to
drop
work-
more, then we take even, that's a 5%, maybe it comes down to 2.
Right, and then
Right,
maybe
they
we
may-
actually
you may
get it
end
to
up
where it
getting
needs to
what
be.
would be almost close to what they would want by the time they do their work.
Without having it all be lowering of Route 2.
Right.
Okay.
And as Bill noted, this project has been in development for a year and a half, 2 years, and we need to move on this project. We can't wait much longer. The MassDOT project's about a year and a half out behind there,
Yeah.
so the timing's just not gonna work to do them at the same time. But with that being said, both designers are in communication, and so our work will be shared with them so that they can plan for the appropriate tie-ins.
And if the apron gets redone by them again,
As long as
what
that
it is,
wall
right?
is not touched.
Advertisement for bids,
Mhm.
prospective timeline.
We were tentatively suggesting January start for the bidding process. I don't know if you all feel ready for that, but I think it's doable. Bill's got everything ready to go. And I think the thought is we would be able to start
So you'd
a
release
hopefully
it.
successful bid, get interest from bidders who are looking to fill their early schedules, and hopefully get somebody in the spring, early summer, ready to go on this project.
More competitive bids.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the first week in January release? All right.
Mandatory site walk, and probably,
If that's what you
I think
want,
so.
sure.
I think so.
Yeah, yeah. I
There's-
feel
there-
better.
There's a lot of
regardless.
nuance there. I think trying to do it from a piece of paper is not going to be beneficial.
Saying you have to allow for questions and the issue of addenda, at least one, I imagine at least one set of addenda, so.
We're talking a 60 to 90, a 60 or so probably to bid opening, is that what you're thinking? Like 45 days?
60 days.
Well, I don't know, what do you think?
I don't think 60 days is necessary, but I would say probably at least 45 if we're being realistic about, at minimum, the shortest is 2 weeks. So then you add in
So
your
we're
site
talking
visits, your
Early
question
March,
period. I would say
early
we
March
could-
opening and award maybe in April, May is what we're thinking, or in April?
We could have them due in February with a plan to review the bids and make an award by March, unless there's a reason to extend. I don't think there's a reason to.
And if we
Proactively.
award in March, what's that anticipation that that's 6 months out to be complete, or no? 6 months of, 5 months of closure?
Well, it probably wouldn't be 5 months of closure. But
Okay.
it would be 5 months, I'm gonna say 5 months for
Start to finish?
for the whole thing, yeah.
Okay.
They'll be painting the stop line on the 150th day.
But this
So
is-
by fall, I mean, in theory, by fall, late
Right,
fall,
right,
we're
because
wrapping up.
The one thing, on this one recent job, the concrete was hard, we were having a hard time getting the blocks from, I don't know why, I think it was mostly a driver issue, they couldn't get drivers for it, but, we had a project in Winchester, we couldn't get structures. Because they weren't able to cast the concrete. So the sooner you get a contractor on board and the sooner they get shop drawings to us, the sooner they can start manufacturing the block,
Right.
Okay.
so.
So to me, we would do a bid deadline in February. If through the addenda process, we learn that people need more time, we can always extend that deadline and give them more time, but I can't anticipate
No.
why we would need to.
As long as we don't go too much further, because we
Right.
want to get it buttoned up before snow starts flying again next year.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want to be getting up close to paving plants closing
Yeah.
for the season.
No.
We have the existing appropriations. I think we're ready to go on this.
95% ready.
Yeah. Well, I think we do with these
Try and
days,
give you
I
the
think we're
5%.
96 now.
We got to 96.
Yeah, I mean, you can like finalize the dates and just
Yeah.
tell me what,
Yeah.
is best. But I would say opening, late February is
Yeah.
probably, prudent, just to get the ball, get a then you can award it to them, and then it's on them to
Mhm.
Right.
get moving. I did a wall just recently in Warren that was much shorter than this, but again, it's just the base, and this was stepped like 4 times. It was like 250 feet long, and it was 2 weeks. That was much shorter, but,
Was
what,
the excavation the same? Like not being able to
no, but that's what we had
excavate?
designed, and then Ready Rock came back and said just 6 inch.
Oh.
So that's, it's, we'll be beholden to, the depth will make it worse, but that's still, everything's gonna be at the same elevation, so once, it makes it easier too if they wanna build it, they don't have to, they don't have to do it like this, they can build it and, because there's no steps, so they don't have to have the next layer on in any particular spot, so. It's a tight site though, So I think having a mandatory sidewalk out there just to, you know, have them put their, I mean, the specs say that it's presumed that they've looked at it.
Right.
But, you know, you don't want somebody who's unprepared and then asking, how am I supposed to do this
Right.
after you've awarded it, so,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll bid date,
Sidewalk.
sidewalk date, and then final questions, which
We
are
plan to
usually
bring this back on the
5
18th?
business days before the opening.
Right.
I had no plans. I figured we'd figure that out tonight.
Okay.
Is there there's no penalty on the end of the project if they run behind, is there?
There is.
There is a penalty
There is,
clause,
yeah.
I
We have
missed it?
liquidated damages that I've made at 1,200, usually it's
Oh, there it
$1,000
is.
a day, at 1,250 a day.
Okay.
There's plenty, you know, like, they'd be unlikely to do the paving, like on Maple, as its own thing. They probably get the paver out here all at once.
Sure.
But they, I mean, the paving on Maple is, I mean, how long is that gonna take them?
A day probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that.
Paving
Go ahead.
Mhm.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you brought that Maple back up because that was gonna be my question. We have the salt shed area roadway conversation that we did start at some point a little while back. We're not going to have we're not going to get anywhere on that before it needs to get paved, are we?
It's not gonna be paved until
Till the
late
very
summer
end.
anyhow. So I think if we have
So
to.
we might be able to do it under a
Change
change order if we wanted to
Yep.
pave further than the current roadway.
Well, if the contractor does any damage down there, they're gonna have to pave it anyways.
You really want them to put stuff over there, don't you?
So then we
encouraging
encourage them to use that as storage, is what you're saying, with their belt-driven backhoes.
I was gonna say tracked vehicles only, right?
Yeah, track vehicles only.
As part of our scope, as part of our contract with you, part of it was to do a design of the salt shed area.
Right.
So, you know, I kind of had, so I think I showed you, you know, we did turn, you know, because the turning movements are terrible down there. So it's actually, you know, if you did find money to do that, you could actually, reconstruct, and, you know, in a manner such that, trucks can actually back into the salt shed conveniently without, you know, doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, and there's
a
some-
little and a little retaining wall that would allow for better filling of trucks.
Okay.
I have a cost estimate for that, too. Yeah.
Well, there's some roadway versus right of way versus driveway issues too.
Yeah,
Which you
there
probably
is.
already know that we need to sort out probably before we're
Yeah.
ready to hear what that could even cost and then what
But it,
might take to get there. But
I
we've
think
got until that point to do it
Based-
concurrently. Right?
based on the parties that we've spoken to, there's a interest in finding a resolution to that. So I don't
Okay.
think that's gonna be hard, and I think we could take it to one of the town meetings, whether that's a special or the annual.
Okay.
So all of that would be done well in advance of this project getting to paving. So-
Okay. I just don't want to lose sight of it while that's all happening. We're already
Yeah.
there and mobilized, so.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. I guess, other questions? Do we want to carry it?
So on.
Where do we want to go? See a final? What are
Yeah, I
your
was gonna say,
thoughts?
on upper, just overview of it, I have no concerns with it, and all the questions we talked about, and we'll have answers to those about staging areas and all of that. But I would like more than the 15 hours I've had to review 450 pages. So if we could just hold it for one more week and bring it back on the 18th, I'd
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we'll finalize the proposed dates and get
Yeah.
that ready for your review as well. Nice.
Materially, anything in here? I know there's the 5% stuff, but it's pretty granular, I assume? There's nothing materially different,
Right, yeah.
other than
It's
dates
like
and stuff like that?
the Steve Spink is the geotechnical engineer I'm working with on this, and he's shocked by how good this, like usually they're dealing with terrible material, but here, it's nice, so it should work out fine.
In Erving?
Yeah.
In the ground?
Yeah, we didn't hit that, I don't think they hit refusal to like 32 feet.
Wow.
Was that built up? Jeez.
It's
You
the
get
only-
about 3.2 inches in my yard.
I was gonna say, that's about the only place in town you're not hitting ledge within,
Jeez.
Nice
We'll take
area
it.
Back here.
Well, it's probably because we dodged you know?
Yeah, you got the one
Yeah.
path that doesn't have it.
Yeah. It's
Excellent.
happened. It happens.
It's just where they tested it.
Speaking of though, is that in the past, if they hit it, is that additional or is that they're responsible for it? Like ledge or anything like that? Any obstructions that are unexpected?
Hopefully, if there's not an item for rock, I think there's an item for rock excavation yet. Well, it's a token item, but it forces them, we don't anticipate ledge at all, because we did, I think, we did 2 borings here, and then we had 1 here.
Yeah, I think
And
I
1
see
here,
them.
we had 3 borings there, and no ledge. So the likelihood, so at least we put a token number in there, to at least, so when you do find ledge, they can't say, well, that's $500, a yard, or,
Okay,
so they'll put a number in like a penny, so
okay.
likely.
We've run into that.
which
and
we've
so
seen.
We've run into that and, it was well more than that. So that's where my memory comes from.
Yeah.
Of being cautious about that. Whether it's known or not.
All right.
Other things? No?
No,
Okay,
not for-
for the 18th?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you for coming out.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much.
If we have any technical questions, we'll make sure they end up with you.
and I'll pass them on to the
Appropriate party?
appropriate people, yeah.
Perfect.
I know what to do.
Thank you, Bill.
Gonna have a little light reading this week, are we?
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
A lot of late reading every week. Welcome to early 2024. Okay. Let's see. I got that one, that one, that one.
Thanks for setting that up, Brian. Sorry, it wasn't ready for you.
We'll go backward. Meeting minutes from August 7th, 23, October 30th, 23, and November 27th, 2023.
I'm going to expedite this. I didn't have any concerns with any of them, so I'm just going to make a motion to approve minutes from August 7th, 2023, October 30th, 2023, and November 27th, 2023 as written.
I will second that.
Any concerns?
I have no concerns.
I
I
didn't catch
was
any,
able to
no. It
read
was good.
through them and
Yep.
Okay.
I'm satisfied.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and on to review of the proposed personnel policies and procedures manual draft, 4th read. Actually, not the 5th, we passed over the 5th.
Right.
And really, first read for you, sir. So maybe just as a preface, I have no problem bringing it back for, 2 more reads after tonight to give more time to absorb it and go through it. There's no pressure to adopt on the 6th read or 5th read or 4th read or whatever. So.
I did review this, and I would not be opposed to bringing it back one more time just so I can get more familiar and more granular into it, but for the, I'm trying to find my notes here. One thing I did want to put out for consideration under bereavement leave.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, on page 21.
21. Thank you.
About 2/3 of the way down where it opens bereavement leave and changed it to 5 consecutive days, but there's a question about normal work days, 8 versus 10-hour days, and would it make sense to change that to 40 consecutive hours as opposed to who might benefit more on 5 10-hour days versus 5 8-hour days, so that it would be equitable?
The days and hours conversation.
Right.
And I only say it because it happens throughout, right?
Sure.
And I'm trying to recall, I think maybe holidays might have been the first time it was kind of the first one that came.
Holidays,
Is a holiday
vacation
eight, or
time.
is it the shift you work, or is it
Yeah.
8 hours, is it a day, is it?
Vacation, yep.
So to that point, though, in those other areas, we did make a shift from awarding time or granting time by day and shifted to the idea of everything was by hour, because then it doesn't, you're awarded your vacation, by hours, not by days. So if you're a 5-hour-a-day employee, you only have to use 5 hours. And so it's all, you're awarded it differently and you utilize it differently. I'm not sure why we never thought about applying that to the bereavement.
Yeah, we absolutely can.
Probably because we were still thinking through changing the overall period and hadn't gotten to
Right.
the nuance. I don't see why 40 hours wouldn't be a better choice, I think.
So for immediate, it'd be a maximum of 40 hours. For non-immediate, it'd be a maximum of 8 hours, because it's the one day. And it's still with the understanding that it is tied to the employee's regular schedule. So if they were routinely scheduled to work 6 hours, that would be the benefit. So it's this top ceiling that we're setting.
Yeah, the only time, so it makes sense on the first line to say it's 40 continuous hours. If it's somebody who typically works at, you had mentioned 8-hour cap
Right,
for the one day,
right.
that's where it gets different. If I'm scheduled to work a 10-hour day by, not by contract, but by agreement, then my benefit for that one day off is 10 hours as opposed to your 8-hour day.
Correct. Or a 6-hour,
Or a 6-hour, or, so,
But in holiday, we just went to 8 and said it's not your shift, it's 8, right?
yes. And holiday's different because that is uniformly, there's a finite number of holidays. There's 12 of them, I believe, 11, 12. 12 holidays. So if you look at that by hours, you can't give somebody 12 10-hour holidays, that's 120 hours, as opposed to somebody 12 8-hour holidays, that's 96 hours. So
Right.
it's
right.
8 hours capped.
I guess I was saying, should we just say it's 8? Whether you work 6, 8, or 10, it's 8 hours.
Yeah, I mean, that was the stance we've been taking on all of them, is the use of time is capped at 8 hours per day, even if you have a 10-hour schedule. If you want to get the other 2 hours of pay, you have your own personal time that you could use to make that difference.
And that was, you all have been working in that direction to help create equity in the administration of these policies across the different employee groups.
I mean, I think to Jim's point is, because if you say up to 40 hours, then somebody who's a 5-hour employee now gets 8 days off, as opposed to,
Well, so, if I may, I was just kind of referring to personal leave above, and it talks through that quite a bit. It's pro rata if you work less than 40 per week, which may or probably addresses a 5-hour shift employee, because it's probably not 40 throughout the week. So it's probably reduced already. However, I don't follow the second sentence of that, and I think it kind of is trying to talk to the same thing. So if your regular day is 6 hours, when you take a personal day, it's only 6 hours? Did you still get 24 hours of time granted? Or was that reduced to 18? Because your shift was 6 hours.
For our part-time benefited employees.
it's,
But
yeah,
what that's referring to.
Right, that's what it's referring to.
yeah, so the first line says it's credited, so yes, they'll only get 24. If they're only working a certain percentage of 40 hours,
They'll get that
they'll
percentage of
get that
24.
percentage.
Right.
But
They'll
if
get
they work a 6-hour shift, but they work 40 hours, there's no prorating.
Correct,
So
if they're
the-
a 40
The
hour.
6-hour for a personal day doesn't make, the language doesn't make sense to me, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Are you thinking if they have like some variety within their schedule where one day's shorter than another day?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're trying to say a 6 hours a week employee who might only work 24 for the whole week, right? Is
Right.
what you're trying to allude to?
That's the
But
example.
that sounds like it's saying your shift is now how many hours you're going to get for that personal day
Got it.
instead of 24.
We can
Because it just
clarify
said you
that.
only get 6 if you work a 6-hour day,
We can work on clarifying that.
which is really not what it's about. It's, you'd only get 18 if you work 24 hours a week or some, whatever that rate ratio is.
Right. It
But
was
that's
trying
what
to
it's
provide that
meant to
example.
say.
Correct.
Yes.
But instead, it looks like it's defining your normal workday is the number of hours you're going to get.
Okay.
As opposed to the total allotment for the year based on your hours worked per year.
Right.
Okay. So we can clean that one up.
Because I think it's the same kind of idea we're talking about with the bereavement piece, and I think it's, for me, it's reading contrary to what we're saying, which is you're granted a certain number of hours. Are we allowing someone to use that up to the full hours they would work that day because it's their bank of time? Or can they only use up to 8 hours per calendar day? And then they supplement the difference if their shift is longer and they want to.
Okay.
Does that make sense? My question makes sense?
Yep. So I'll work on some proposed revised language.
Well, I think in general, we're talking about going to 40 hours and 8 hours. But then you, Scott, brought in about how much can they use. So if they work normally 10-hour days, can they use 10 hours a day, all 4 days in a row and use the 40 up? Or can they only use 8 hours per calendar day and have to supplement the balance? If they want to be paid for the full amount. You follow my question?
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of why I was proposing the 40 hours. Is if a 10-hour employee wants to burn 10 hours, so their meter would end, if they're going to burn 10 hours a day, Monday through Thursday, then okay. An 8-hour employee would burn Monday through Friday, so they would be done in 5 full days, whereas, what it says right now, and you could have a 10-hour employee that has Monday through Thursday off and then carries over to the following Monday.
So
Right.
would it make sense, I know we're trying to be consistent through everything. Would it make sense to make the revision to the full-time employees for the 40 hours as you're describing and leaving the scenario of a 1 day for non-immediate family as defined as 1 day and just allow it to reflect the employees what their day would be?
So it's 6, 8, 10 in our examples today, it's just a day, and whether that benefits you for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours is based on the idea we want to give you the paid day off, not about
Right.
Yeah.
the equity of the compensation for that day.
The section will read odd because it will talk hours in the first section and talk a day in the second section, but I think you all are zeroing in on a nuance that obviously has an emotional meaning to the employee, and you're trying to be sensitive to that. At the same point, I can't find in this moment the language that would help get at what you all are talking about, and so maybe it just needs to be left alone. But I think it does make sense to adjust the 40 hours in the first section, and that's a consistency issue that we've been trying to strive for.
And so instead of be granted 40 hours, which must be taken on consecutive work days, it shouldn't be just days, it's working days,
Right.
obviously,
Right.
even if there's a gap between them in your schedule. And then be eligible for 1 day leave. Or it really should say 1 normal working shift, right? I mean, whatever that is for that person. That's what you're proposing, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree with the flip-flopping between the two. But there's no differentiation on bereavement leave for benefit eligible part-timers or full-timers. It's just a benefit. For any benefited person has this leave. So we have quite a few, if you just leave it at 40 hours.
Oh, we need to pull down the prorating language from personal
Yeah,
days
okay.
too. Yeah,
You've
I
got
see your point.
You've got to prorate that because all of a sudden
Sure.
somebody who,
It's the next paragraph.
It is the next one. He's right.
I don't think it reads as clearly as it should.
The first sentence is fine, that it's like regular work hours and shall be granted and used pro rata.
Right.
But the regular work day, 6 hour, that whole couple sentence
example.
there
yeah, I
needs to be
think that all
cleaned up.
needs to get wiped out and it needs to be very clear that
If your normal schedule's 24 hours instead of 40, you're going to get
your 24/40ths of whatever
Of
the
the-
bereavement
of the
time
grant,
is.
yeah.
Whatever the granted time is. How we use that, it's up to that amount. So for a full-time 40-hour employee, it's 40 hours of time. 5 days for a typical 40-hour, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week employee, it's 40 hours.
a 24, it's 24. I mean, it's literally what your shifts are,
literally,
right? Or what
yeah.
your normal is, right?
Yep, and so you break it down and you use it accordingly.
The one day, we just need to do the opposite and state that it is not prorated. It is one
It's just
working
whatever your
shift.
working shift is.
Right,
Yeah.
Whatever your normal working shift would be.
Yeah. And so that addresses the concern, by wording it at 40 hours, and I'm going to highlight one department that's here that works 10-hour days. That allows that department, those staff members the language of 40 hours allows you to access the 40 hours of bereavement in a 4-day period. And be made whole on what would have been a full workday.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So
That's
your
one.
question about maximum benefit, 8 hours per day or up to 10, is that apply anywhere else in here? Or should we just skim it? Like when we're proofing through and look for other areas
Yeah,
where
it was.
this inconsistency needs to be cleaned up?
That was the last place it was being called out as a question, but I think we should read back through the document
Yeah,
again
I
and
think
just
it
make
might
sure.
be in there in other places.
I'll double check.
Yeah.
Right, and
we
we'll
all
at least
should.
need to reconsider if we're letting them use hours consecutively in increments up to the full shift,
Right.
right? Rather than up to 8.
Yeah. The only time that I think it makes sense to, so there are finite reasons that you have to keep it at 8 hours for certain leaves.
Like holiday.
A holiday, personal time, it's by hour. You can't say it's by day, because if I give somebody, oh, that's 3 days, well, a 10-hour employee is getting 30 hours of personal time, and an 8-hour employee is only getting 24. So it has to be by hours.
Right.
And everything is based on an 8-hour workday. Variations from that may utilize the time differently, as long as we're allocating it in hours, not in days.
I think we cut most of
I
that.
think
when
we did.
it, but I will reread it and double check.
Right.
I'll recruit some proofreaders and we'll go through it again.
Okay. I noticed the last sentence of bereavement maybe has close to a better pro rata explanation as well,
Okay.
which you highlighted as well, or someone did,
Okay.
about part-time would receive the same portion of their part-time to full-time service.
Okay.
So
So-
that was the,
I was just, if you want, I know we want to read it again, but I'd like to at least hit some of the comment sections this evening, just to make sure that
Absolutely.
we're on the same page
You
when
wanna
we're
just
going
top
through.
down?
Yeah, just top down. I know Brian and I met last week before, I don't remember
A
now.
week ago, yep.
And we went through this one more time, just to, sort of talk through some of these things that were questions in the past, but I think over the last 6 months plus, we've handled some of these questions individually, which then lead to answering it in this manual. But meal and break periods was one I wanted to, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I don't know if that's the first page that has a comment, but
It is not.
page 5 before the comments, I just,
The whole strikeout of this manual.
no, the periods, period or periods under benefits, waiting period.
Oh,
Went from plural, not plural to plural, but the title's not plural and the benefits are plural, so that's,
We will fix that.
that seems like we corrected it incorrectly. I don't know, but now I'll be the grammar police for Jim today.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Before I start printing copies, we should get
Glad you have
as
that
many
back.
grammatical updates, but we will fix that.
I've
Okay.
been lax lately. I'll get back on it. All right. I guess meal breaks is the first comment.
Yeah, so that was the
Okay.
first one, and what we had talked about, I think this one came up quite a bit with the library, because they internally have run on a minimum staffing requirement of 2 people in the building, and it creates problems for them to be able to take their meals. And so when Brian and I were talking about it, my thought was the town is not wavering on, this is based on law. If you work a certain number of hours, you are entitled to a meal break. No work, off the clock, you are not paid for it, you are not asked to work. And any individual can exercise that right at any time. That's our policy. If certain, other commissions and boards that have oversight over their staff have agreements where they work through and they do things, those are their internal procedures, but it does not change the policy. So somebody, because I think they've been saying, well, we're okay with it, we just work through it, and we only work we don't work an 8.5-hour shift, we work an 8-hour shift. And we work our day, and we don't get paid for lunch because we don't take it, we just eat a meal on the fly. So they're opting out of taking their lunch. And I think that needs to be captured in those departments' procedures, that it is optional and those people can opt out of that at any time with no repercussion. If they say, I want to take a 30-minute meal break, or I want to run home because I live 3 minutes away and I'm leaving the building for 30 minutes, they can do that. And we cannot tell them no, because we have mandatory minimum staffings at the library. It doesn't happen that way. We cannot deny them that right to do so. They're not, the library doesn't fall under one of the exemptions.
It's not an emergent service. Same with town hall. We've
Correct.
had that conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
See, a lot
So-
of places actually close for a lunch.
yeah.
Correct.
Like
And
business
so I
offices
was
and
saying
stuff will
they
have a
can,
closed period.
internally, they can look at their procedures of how they address that and work on that internally, but as a policy standard, this doesn't change. The request was to change that and work around the policy to allow for more exemptions, and my stance is no. Very simply
We
put.
can't have a policy that violates law.
Correct.
Well, and they can't work through it, it's compensable time. So you can't,
Right.
it has to be,
Yeah.
so, and we don't pay lunch breaks with the exception of police and public safety when in an emergency.
When they're
Type
on a
situation.
call or snow and those.
Right,
type
in
of
those type of emergency or,
things, when you're actively responding.
active situations where it does not allow for standard breaks, right?
Okay. So I can try to find a way to capture that language.
Adding that language, yeah.
Yep.
Overtime.
So you had already stricken, holiday was in that list at the bottom, and you had previously stricken that. That's why it's not showing anymore.
Wait, what? We already struck that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for the last sentence, time off for vacation time,
Oh,
sick or
we
personal.
struck
or
that
any
already,
leave
even though
of
it's not
absence.
struck in here?
Holiday was in that list,
And we,
Oh, holiday was excluded.
right,
but you all had an open question, and again, I think this is one of those topics that you worked through throughout the year. This, if you recall, the previous manual did not address overtime. We just follow FLSA. So this is the first time you've had overtime language being worked into the manual.
But practice didn't follow FLS, did it?
It was more generous.
Yeah.
Yep. In my
So
recollection
practice was more generous than FLSA. We were silent on it in our policy.
correct. And my recollection was that it was meant to be retained as the practice, regardless of
The inclusion of holidays, you mean?
Like counting holidays, I think there was a question about the vacation or personal time if people were coming back.
So,
Right.
yeah, we've had a
Yeah,
differing of opinions on
they've been
this.
back and forth on it, and there's been a lot of discussion.
And I've been very vocal on my stance on it, is my time is just as valuable as myself being there physically doing it. I only have so many vacation hours, so many personal days. If I want to use one of those on a Monday to take that day off, and I work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then something comes up on Saturday, I don't want to then, and I work it, I don't want somebody to turn around and say, well, we're going to give you back some of your vacation time that you didn't use and call that regular time now. That's,
I see what-
in
I mean,
essence,
I
is what they're
understand
doing.
what you're saying. I understand.
You know, and
So
so
you're-
my stance always has been, if I work Monday through Friday and I work 40 hours and I decide to take Wednesday off because I have a personal day and I have something I need to attend to, and overtime comes up where I have to work late on Thursday or Friday and it puts me over what would have been my 40 hours, inclusive of whatever time off I used middle of that week, entitled to overtime. It's above and beyond what the normal schedule would have been. I don't like I've never been a fan of the nitpicking of physical hours in the seat doing the job or utilization of time. And I get it from a standpoint of finances. You can get very, cost savings measures can be that we don't have to pay overtime because we're not required to because you weren't physically here, and the law says you can do that. I disagree with counsel that we should not do that. I think we should be honoring that time as attributing hours worked towards overtime. It's just my stance.
Far from the first time we talked about it. If you
No,
want to
it's
carry
not.
it and talk more next
Yeah,
time. I'm not,
no,
not looking to you.
yeah, right,
that you have to say something.
Yeah, it's
and
definitely
weigh
not
in,
the
but-
first time he and I have talked about it.
No, and I can see where, if, in Scott's example, he uses his hours of PTO, that's coming off our liability side for time that, a benefit time that we're carrying encumbered, so. I can see both sides of the argument, and, if we were to say, no, we're not paying you because you weren't here, and that's, goes back into,
Well, it's not that we're-
It's about how quickly you get to the overtime rate. Really,
Right.
I mean, it's not
that they're not paying
pay,
them,
but we're not
it's that
paying
they're just
overtime.
paying straight time. So
Right.
and in all likelihood, if somebody says, well, I need you to stay late and work tonight, and they're like, for straight time? Yeah, I got stuff to do after work. I'm leaving. I'm going. I'm not staying. It's not mandatory.
It might be, but well, we'll bring
And
that
then-
into this because
and then
it'll
you get
complicate
into,
it.
and that's where I get into, okay, so you're mandating I stay, and you're also mandating I stay for straight time. It's just not,
Because you didn't actually work 40 hours yet. So.
Yeah.
But I mean, I respect.
you're going to
I
have some
respect
heavy
your
decision
opinion.
making because we are
No,
polar
we're-
opposites on this.
Hey, I respect your opinion about this, and I worked under this, so
Yeah.
I enjoyed this. I
Yeah.
understand what it is, and I know that
Yeah.
my peers do not enjoy that anymore where I am, and I'm sure they're all bitter about it. Whoever was there before, when I was hourly and enjoying it too. So
Yeah.
I get it.
All right.
Maybe the holiday one, which is not on the list anymore. Are you
The
for or
holiday
against
one,
the holiday?
I think the holiday one we discussed when we approved the holiday language, we approved the last holidays, I think it was before things, it was last year, wasn't it?
when we changed the holiday, or yeah.
We incorporated that one saying that time does count towards hours worked. That's why it got omitted out of the exceptions.
Did we?
Yeah,
Okay.
correct?
I had it as that was settled, and then these other questions
Settled
remain.
how? settled it is or isn't in the
It
calculation?
counted towards your hours worked that week.
Okay,
I can pull.
for overtime calculation.
Correct. But the open conversation, this goes back
I'm
to
not saying it's
Selectman Bembury
open or
and-
not, I
and
don't
you all.
recall, so,
Was that
without
there was
looking
still-
at that section again specifically, I don't recall, so.
Still an open question on these ones. I think the way the conversation's playing out today is how it played out the last time.
And the
I
time
didn't
before that-
actually weigh in and give an opinion this time, I just offered the counterpoint, I didn't say I had an opinion either way.
And I think one place where I was trying to express a concern, but I think there was two ways to look at it, was the use of sick time towards these calculations. I was concerned about the impacts one way or the other about people using after we've just come out of a global pandemic. People need to use the sick time. The sick time, while it's a benefit for employees, it's an operational tool that the employers have to keep their workforce healthy and safe. And so if we offer paid time so people stay home and rest when they need to, so that they are meeting their needs, but they're also not exposing their colleagues to something, I want to make sure that we protect that practice. So however that needs to be reflected in these policies, and I know that there was differing viewpoints about the psychology of that time and how it's used and what would incentivize somebody to actually use it the way it's meant to. Whatever that requires to get that outcome, that people stay home when they're sick and they don't come in unnecessarily, is all I want to achieve. So however we wordsmith that.
I'm reading the holiday section in here. I don't see any reference to it, except if it's an unscheduled shift.
Yeah, it's not going to reference in there.
No,
The
it was in the
conversation,
discussion.
the conversation was whether or not it would be used as a method in calculating time when it comes to awarding overtime. And that's why it was removed from. So you won't see it added to holiday because it's related to overtime. So it was omitted from the overtime language. But you're not going to reference overtime
Yeah,
in,
no, I follow what you're saying.
yeah. So
But
you
we-
won't
I need
find
to
any
go
language
reread that, then I
referencing
guess
it
I'm
in
not
there.
following it.
But we can reference it if you like.
Never mind, I was reading that language wrong in the overtime section. I was reading it as the inclusive list, not the
Oh.
exclusive list,
No,
because I thought it was worded the way Scott is advocating.
Yes.
Not the way it's
No,
written, so.
it's the exclusion.
I got it, these are the exclusions,
Those are
not
the
the inclusions.
exclusions. The only
I was just
inclusion is
flipping it.
holiday.
Okay, I got you.
And I'm advocating that right now, I would advocate that all time is calculated towards hours worked when it comes to calculating overtime above and beyond 40 hours. There's another caveat in there about overtime, callback pay, those type of things for part-time. And I'm still under the stance that it's only above and beyond 40 hours.
By law, we have to, so like, there was a question about that for compensatory time, we have to pay out that time. You can't even access something like a compensatory time option until you hit 40
Until
hours.
you hit 40 hours.
So there were some questions about, for our regularly scheduled part-time employees, what does that look like? And unfortunately,
Not until
most
you
of
hit
those things-
40.
You gotta hit 40,
All of this
unfortunately.
stuff is dependent upon actually
other-
getting to 40 hours with your regularly or additionally scheduled.
Otherwise, we may be in violation of FLSA. So, yep.
Okay. So we'll come back to the exclusion or
Yeah,
inclusion
I
of
mean,
those
I'd
items.
just say right now, I'm leaning toward Scott's argument, and taking it maybe a half step further is, I would rather pay out those benefit hours now at a current rate than have a payout, say, somebody leaves 3 months from now at a higher, or 3 years from now, and we're doing a package buyout at a higher rate later, because nobody's rates are going down.
And it keeps accumulating.
So,
Up to a point.
in the time,
Sure.
yeah,
That's
but
fair.
just in terms of time value of money, I'd rather pay that liability off now than later.
You sound like somebody who works in the financial industry. From the standpoint that Brian brings of just, and you, Scott, about not like encouraging people to work when we need them to and to stay out when they're sick and all of those things, obviously, including or not including this, can dissuade or encourage certain behaviors. So I'm not, for those reasons, I'm in favor of it, just from a sheer financial, it's not obviously the best for the cost to the town, but that's not what, this is not exclusively about that.
Correct.
So,
All right, something to chew on for the next
yeah,
week until we bring it back. I just want to jump down. I think the next one is not till page 13. It's related to longevity.
Is it in the timekeeping section, is it okay that I reflected it, that you've already made the change that we prospectively thought we'd be making? So we said that on July 1, we'd be changing the payroll weeks. We've done that, it's past July 1.
Yeah, it's
so
already, we
we already
did that.
adopted that
We
as a
did that.
standalone thing.
So I've modified it in the manual so it reflects that.
Without a review, yeah, no,
Not as
that's
a
fine.
track change.
Not as a
It-
track
it
change,
is
it's
what it
already an
is.
adopted change,
Yeah.
it's part of the manual, yep, no, fine.
So jumping down to longevity, number 6, it was benefits eligible part-time employees shall receive a pro rata longevity benefit. We had gone back and forth. I think one of our previous, the treasurers had made a change on that and was giving full longevity payment regardless of hours worked. We have not found anything where it's been something we discussed or that came to a board to discuss, other than notification that
Correct.
it had been changed. So there's back and forth on both of those. Financially, we have so few benefited part-time. If you look at what they would get as a prorated versus what they would get as a full-time, the difference is minimal.
At some point, if you're gonna prorate that, why bother? Because it's so small.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
And
really,
so
and
just
if it's
to
years
keep-
of service, it's years of service.
It's years of
I'm-
service. Somebody gives you 10
Maybe I had a
years of
different
ser-
argument
yeah.
before, but I
Yeah.
tend to agree
Somebody gives you
that
10
we
years
don't
of service
prorate it.
and it's a $750 stipend. Do I really need to prorate that down to a $625? I mean, it's pennies when you're talking about a 12, 13, $14 million annual budget for somebody to get that same longevity, honoring the years of service to the town. So I would be okay with just striking number 6.
Strike subsection 6.
I'm
I'm
you good
okay
with
with
it?
that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Excellent.
Decision made.
Callback pay, we just discussed, right?
Yep. That ties into the overtime.
Right.
Yep.
And that
So
this section
so
of
the answer
callback
generally
pay.
is no, it only applies once you're past 40 hours.
Right, if you're beyond 40 hours, even if you're a
Within the work
24-hour
week.
employee and you go over 40 hours and that callback continues, then this section applies.
Right. But it only applies when you hit 40 hours within your work week
Correct.
and beyond. Okay.
And then-
Or beyond 40.
Right.
And then-
Everybody needs to be paid for their hours.
Yeah, comp time is the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm probably not ready to talk through it tonight, but would like to revisit comp in general. I personally don't like it either. I know there's some comments in here both ways, but just in general.
So, yeah, and just some thoughts on it. I know in my previous life, one of the issues with comp time before it was adhered to or utilized in a different way was it was unregulated on how long you could hold on to it. And it became a time bank that when somebody retired and they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of unpaid liability, and like you said, they might have earned that in year 2
Right.
when they were gung-ho and worked 80 hours a week, and now we're paying it out when they're on year 32 at a much higher rate, and it's taking a hit to the bank. Putting a time limit. One of the changes that they made was you have to use it within 30 days. So, if you don't want to get paid right now, but you want a little extra time off, and you got something coming up next month, maybe it's 30 days, 60 days, but a time frame, like you use it relatively soon. We don't need to pay you right now, but at least then it's the same pay rate. You're either going to take a day and a half off, or you're going to get a day and a half of pay for the extra day work you did.
And that's what we've been doing. We've been using the 30 days. If somebody needs more than 30 days, their supervisor can approve that in writing and give a
Right.
copy to the treasurer's office. But by June 30, the treasurer cashes out whatever the available balances are to the employees.
Right, and so
It gets paid out at the current
It gets
rate.
paid out at the current rate, which is the same as if they had taken that pay in
Right.
that pay period. They just have to get it 2 pay periods later if they don't use it.
So then everybody's whole.
But the difference is that that potentially generates additional overtime pay to backfill them when they're out on that comp time. So it actually can cause you an increased liability beyond the liability of the comp time itself. Because if they worked the overtime and were paid in that, at that point,
So you-
they did not then generate another opportunity to be, to have to be backfilled with overtime.
And you could put those caveats in there, that it can't be.
It can't be used.
It can't be used if it
has to be-
generates,
yeah,
if it generates
overtime.
overtime.
I think we have.
Do we have it in there? I thought we
I
had it
don't know if
somewhere.
it's in here, but I think I have it in a different agreement, and I can borrow that language.
Yeah. And that
I
language
mean,
is
that
not.
would probably
that-
eliminate my,
Yeah,
the
that
only
language
other piece.
isn't new, to be able to say it's,
No.
you know, it's only approved if it, you know, at the direction of the supervisor, the department head. And their notice is, you're not gonna utilize it if it's causing additional overtime to give
At
that
which
time off.
point, they'd just be paid it at overtime at 30 days,
Right.
if they weren't able to before then.
Right.
Okay, I would be better with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that allows somebody who says, I've got something going on, I don't wanna take it tonight, I'll just bank the hours and I'll use them next week and I'll take a long weekend.
Right.
It doesn't,
Okay. Let me grab some language from another agreement, and I'll see if that matches what you're looking to achieve.
Thank you.
I don't think there's a ton more clerical, just typographical stuff on the vacation leave.
Okay.
Under the, you already addressed
The
it.
continuous service and
Yeah,
the
the
vacation
continue,
time
the
accrued?
chart, it got mixed up with cut and paste, it got moved around, but Brian's corrected that. We already discussed bereavement. Oh, the parental leave. So, and I think council weighed in on this again after we sent it to them. Placement of a child related to foster care is listed in there, and I think the idea was placement of a child for long-term foster care is one thing, but we also have foster care style that is just respite. You get the call at 10 o'clock at night, you know, it could be from Chief Hull saying, we've got a placement of a child, you're a respite foster care person. Does that, you know, and you need to hold them for 24 hours until we get into court on Monday or Tuesday and figure out what DCF wants to do. Is that the same that's going to trigger parental leave?
And that question
Because
came,
that can happen every 2 weeks.
and that question came up from the supervisor level because of the potential burden that would place on a department's ability to function when those events occurred. So again, it was not by any means, and for anybody listening, it was not meant to detract
Right.
employees from going through the foster care process and adopting children. That's not at all the question. It was more of how do you balance that, and to what level of a benefit is it when also considering the ability for the department to function.
Right. I don't have any language to suggest to replace it, but just the idea that the intent of placement of a foster child, the intention was the long-term placement. It is no different than going through adoption or a long-term foster or having a child. They're all the same, and they're all equal
Right.
in that aspect. But the only caveat is that then captured, it reached out and grabbed that respite foster care placement, which, like I said, I know people that do that, and it can happen quite often, depending on location and how often you have the ability and how many children you're caring for at the time. And I don't know from a functionality standpoint if that works on the town side. So how we capture that language to differentiate between the two.
I can try to
I'm
run.
sure there's some modern language out there
There's gotta be
that
something out
covers
there.
both ways, and
Right, I mean, so
if council doesn't have anything, we might go find something.
we want to be sensitive to the needs of people who, you know, children who are in extremely vulnerable positions,
Yeah.
and those among us who are compassionate enough to provide that respite. So at the cost of, departments not being functional, on the flip side, is there a way without being unsympathetic, we could develop a reasonable cap? I mean, that sounds insensitive coming out of my mouth, but I'm just wondering.
I think balancing that, generous, necessary, thing they're doing with operating the town, it's a
Yeah.
it's a tough balance. I did notice under leave entitlement,
Yeah, I was
just to
gonna
note
say,
that
we
it
do
says
have it.
placement, but then it says
With intent.
where there's intent to adopt.
And legal, I
So
don't
that's
think has
not
weighed
just
in on whether or not that
emergency placement, that's-
satisfies
As a limitation.
of not allowing somebody with just respite foster care placement.
Let me double check, because this is tying back in to the requirements into the parental leave
Right.
acts, right? So we just want to make sure
That it
that we're not
follows.
trying to modify language that's statutorily prescribed to us.
Right.
So let me see if I can bring some of this conversation back to council and see if we can drill down to that on a more nuanced level and see if we can come up with something that hits all of these targets.
Okay.
Not an easy.
So am I reading that correctly, that if both parents are employed, same section,
Okay.
entitlement is 8 each, and it doesn't speak to concurrent or consecutive? Or 8 hours for both? That the second sentence on leave entitlement.
What page you on, Jay?
24, leave entitlement, second sentence, or second paragraph.
So that is what you're reading.
Yeah.
And I believe that was reflective of the requests from the employees. And I think, if I am recalling the conversations correctly, to comply with the law, the 8 weeks is what needs to be granted. So if it is a couple that both were employed by the town, that you could structure the policy to provide the 8 weeks, and they could choose to share it, or one could take the leave over another, that
The
could be.
combined benefit would be only 8, limited to 8?
And I believe the response, if I'm recalling correctly from the staff, was that if you're an employee of the town and you happen to have a partner who's also an employee of the town, that you both have the same benefit. And so I believe that this reflects that advocacy. But I think that's also speaking towards some of the concerns about the operation of the ability to operate a department.
Right, we're pretty small, so it's,
Yeah, when you're one
It's a
or
big impact.
two-person departments, part-time departments, it
Right.
can be very hard.
yeah, I don't have an opinion at the moment. I
was
just
gonna
wanted,
say,
either
and
way,
to
I
that
just want
point,
to
though,
to
how-
ponder that a little bit more.
How often historically have we had a one or two person department that is solely occupied by a
We couldn't, or
That
shouldn't.
was,
I
that
mean,
came up at the conversation as well.
I'd like to
That's
go back for the
highly
last
unlikely.
150 years and figure out how many times have we had a sole department that cannot function if those two people are not there
many
and their husband and wife.
And it doesn't.
But how many
wife and wife,
departments
or,
do we
yeah.
have that are 2 people or 1 person, and if therefore 2 departments are now down to 1 person?
That's
For 8 weeks functionally, that's not very
correct,
functional.
but that's irrelevant because if they're not married and they both have children at the same time, they're both going to be out either way.
The odds that it's the same 8 weeks is much slimmer than the
True.
first scenario.
I'm just saying. I mean, we're splitting hairs.
I
here.
know
mean,
we are,
it's,
I
you
know we are, yeah.
And I think that's
No,
how we
I know.
got to the recommendation.
Yeah.
Because we went through a similar thought exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reality is it's highly unlikely
I'm surprised it wasn't a 12-week ask, though. That's so much
Yeah.
more common than 8 these days, but that's just,
Do we need a nepotism clause?
well, that gets to the same department issue, and then,
Yeah,
but
right.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I think the thought process was, this would be accessed so few and far between for the number of times in the next couple of decades.
We'll figure it out.
As
figure
it
it
comes up, you can figure out how to function for 8 weeks. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
It was more,
Well, somebody will.
and that, again, as my recollection is coming back to me, it was more centered on the morale of the staff. And
Yeah.
obviously you want our staff to be well, and if they need to bond with their child, and who knows what complications they may have to do. The idea that we're like putting a clock on that didn't make sense. So,
We'll put a clock on everything, though, at the end of the day,
I
because we
know.
still have to operate the town, so.
and that's true.
Not being insensitive, I agree. Like I said, I'm surprised that it's not 12 weeks. It's very, very rare I see anything under 12 weeks anymore.
Nobody wants to take 12 weeks unpaid.
Is it unpaid? Did I miss that?
That's what we grant, it's unpaid.
Oh.
I mean, obviously, people can utilize the
Use
time.
all your benefit
You
time,
can
yeah.
use all your
Yeah,
benefit
no,
time,
no, that's
but it's
fine. I
unpaid.
mean, that's
Yeah. It's different. It's,
no offense to anyone, that's a deterrent. Where I work, it's 12 weeks each, and they both can take it. Paid. So it's,
yeah.
I'm not looking at it with the same lens, obviously,
Yeah.
so, all right. That's fine.
I think the only other things that are highlighted are the Appendix A and B, right? You made some slight changes, or A
Right,
and C.
just updated.
Sorry, just updated.
The appendix language there in A, that
Yeah,
may be
just
updated.
saying that it can be updated from time to time, because
Right.
that
This gets
information-
printed, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's accurate anymore.
case in point, Appendix C was the dental plan changed.
Yep.
We need, I don't want to have to bring this whole policy back, this whole manual back every time that we make a change to something in an appendix.
Contact information, right?
Yeah. A different person to call, we have to bring it back and reapprove it.
I think that's consistent with other areas we've tried to work on
Right.
as well.
Right.
So between the review of the manual and the review of Maple Ave and Bridge Street, got some light reading to do before next week.
Anything
So
else on the,
Those are the only two agenda items?
That's it.
Is that what I'm
That's it, don't add anything else.
business licenses?
Yeah,
and
we've got quite a bit,
Senior housing
actually.
proposal and
Yeah, no, it's on there. We've got quite a bit.
potential January STM,
Yeah.
because we may have to bring something to the voters to authorize a 5-year contract within 60 days, and the clock already started, if I understand correctly.
Yeah.
We have an
It's for the
obligation to bring it that
new
we've just
transportation
found out
contract
about.
For the school.
So we were unaware of it until after that clock started,
Okay.
that we may need to bring it, so. Not that I wanted to scramble together, but be thinking about it, I just, as an agenda for next week,
Okay,
because we have
well,
very little time to be putting it together and putting it out, so.
you guys can prepare to talk about the senior housing, because
Yep.
No, I know
that's
you
fine.
will, yeah.
We got that.
You can read it for fun.
Yeah.
I'll read it, but
Yeah, no, all good. We are going back into executive
Yeah.
session after, but I think next meeting, those are some of the variety of things that we have lined up. That meeting is getting longer and longer by the minute.
We knew it was going to be, though.
I know. Senior housing, if we don't hear back from council, we'll defer again at this point
We have a meeting with council tomorrow
on that topic.
on this topic.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. Other items that were significant for next week's Monday's meeting that I left out?
No, I think you hit the big ones.
Okay. Did you guys have anything else?
no, sir.
Okay. With that, I move the board goes back into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares, which I do. Ask me 1725, wastewater and water unit.
Second.
We will not return to regular session. All those in favor? Brian, will you call the roll?
Selectman Moyne,
Aye.
Chairman Smith,
Aye.
Selectman Bassarash,
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.